Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another very special episode of the Film Alchemist podcast. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, here for a brief little bit of business before we start tonight's very special episode. Guys, it's official. We're on Patreon, patreon.com/Film Alchemist. You can also find links to our Patreon account on all of our social media sites. Guys, it's a great way for you to not only help the show, but for us to give you the show exactly that you want and deserve. For as little as $1 a month, you can join us on Discord and some Zoom calls. For a little bit more, you can begin to get curated episodes that you specifically choose. The community we have so far has been amazing, and we can't thank you guys enough for your support. And for those of you who haven't joined us, we would ask that you give us a chance to earn those dollars. We think that you're going to have a great time. So again, that's Film Alchemist on Patreon. Guys, please be sure to leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show, especially if that to be Apple Podcast app. 5 stars, couple sentence, tell us why you like the show. Helps us defeat the algorithmic overlords and continue to ascend to the mountaintop. Well, that sounds more dramatic, but it is very nice every time we get one. Thank you for those of you who've been doing that. You can find us on YouTube. Our channel is Film Alchemist. Make sure to subscribe. You can find video versions of most of these podcasts, along with some other really cool stuff we're working on over there. So get on over to YouTube. You can find us on all the socials you're on. We're there too. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. These are great ways to get in touch with us. Let us know the kind of movies you want us to be talking about, be they new, old, double feature, guests for a month, theme for an entire month, whatever. We want to hear your voices. We just love getting a hold of you guys. So again, socials, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. All right. That's enough business. Let's get to wetting the ear beaks, whatever. I don't know if that's a medical thing, but it sounds cool. All right. We are here today to discuss Nighthawks. I don't know why this movie's called Nighthawks. I forgot to ask about that, but ponder amongst yourselves. We're joined today, or I am. Alex isn't on this one, sadly. Scheduling stuff. I am joined today by a new but very dear friend of mine, Blake Salisbury. I met Blake through the junk food cinema community. The junk food cinema is obviously the junk food cinema is obviously hosted and the community run by one half of junk food cinema, Brian Salisbury, who I've known since college. Just an absolutely amazing guy. So through the Euro pandemic and getting on Zooms and this and that, I became a part of the junk food cinema community. And it is one of the truly best communities I've ever been a part of online. Everyone over there is so lovely. It's a really great group of people. And one of my absolute favorites among them was getting to know Blake Salisbury, who will be joining me today as the guest host. He's one half, with his brother Brian, of the Replay Perview wrestling podcast. So they do awesome. They go back and do all of the wrestling pay-per-view starting at the year 2000, I believe. They're doing some grab bag stuff. It's a really fun podcast. Blake also, in conjunction with Junk Food Cinema, runs their Twitch gaming, Junk Food Arcade. It's really fun. I enjoyed very much watching him play the True Lies video game. Blake is just an awesome guy. He's so earnest and fun, and he makes me laugh so hard, right? I love spending my time with Blake. Although we haven't been friends for a long time, it feels like we have. He's just that guy. The moment you start talking with him, your heart is at ease. Your mind begins to expand. He's a much more clever man than he gives himself credit for. But I absolutely love Blake, and it was my great honor to have him on today's show. And what a great pick, Nighthawks. So please go support Blake on the Replay Per View podcast. Go support Junk Food Arcade on Twitch. That's Junk Food Cinema, I think is the channel. And make sure you guys are listening to Junk Food Cinema and helping out over there. They are great guys and a great podcast. I hope you love this episode as much as I did. Enjoy. All right, guys, welcome to the pod. My dear friend, Blake Salisbury, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on. I am so excited to dive into what we're going to talk about today. But yes, we are here. It is now.
Of course, man. I'm so excited to have you. Would you like to give the listeners a brief introduction to yourself and where they can find your stuff?
I am Blake. I represent Junk Food Cinema in the Junk Food Cinema universe. You can find me on twitch.tv/junkfoodcinema on Thursdays, 8 p.m. Central Time. We play video games based on movies that are sponsored by the episodes of Junk Food Cinema. Sometimes we just play movie-based movies. So it's our movie-based games, I'm sorry. But dude, it is a great time. So check us out, patreon.com/junkfoodcinema.
Yes, and not only Junk Food Cinema, one of my favorite podcasts, one of my favorite people, Brian Salisbury, your brother, but you guys also host Play Perview.
Yes, we do.
A wrestling podcast, which I love because my son's into wrestling now.
Yeah, we dive in. It's the side podcast, and it's a lot of fun. We dive into wrestling right now. We were doing a grab bag of random DVD assortments of wrestling, and it's been a huge undertaking, but it's been so much fun. So,
well, you guys are amazing at it. Thanks for making the time. All right, so we talked, and I wanted to get you on the show because I love you dearly. You brought an absolute banger, and you did my favorite thing, which is when a guest brings me a movie, and I go, when would we have gotten to this movie if not for this person? And this one's one of those, I'm like, it might have been years. And you brought it to us. So would you like to introduce what we're watching tonight and why you picked it?
We are watching Nighthawks, which is from 1981, I believe. Yeah, 1981. And it stars Sylvester Stallone, Billy D. Williams, Rutger Hauer. It is a star-studded lineup of individuals there. And it's just a lot of fun. How I found this movie is actually kind of interesting. I grew up on a street with a friend of mine who went to the same elementary school, so I knew her mom. So I was actually Facebook friends with her, and she was just randomly posting pictures from her past. And one of the pictures that she posted was I was in London, and this is a picture of me and Stallone, and he's shooting a movie there. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, Stallone has a beard, right? And he looks exactly like he does in this movie. It's 1979 when they're filming the movie. And I was like, shooting in London. I was like, when did Sylvester Stallone do that? So it kind of piqued my interest. And then Brian's like, dude, that's from Nighthawks. So that's how I found this movie. Is I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like the look of Stallone alone is epic. And I love that.
Yes. This one is hilarious to me because it has Rutger Hauer, who's one of the great kind of character actor, bad guy actors, right? Yep. Doing a lovely kind of perverse character. You got Billy D. Williams, who's just amazing, but he's not his normal kind of smooth self. And what I really like, I think this is one of Stallone's better roles, and it gets overlooked all the time because this is the glimpse into the future if he hadn't just forced Rocky into existence, and he just kind of became this character actor guy. And there's a lot of extra stuff he does in this one that I could not get enough of. I found fascinating. I mean, simply from the opening scene, right? Because it starts off with kind of this gritty city, right? You know, that little
New York City, dangerous 80s, like you're gonna get stabbed anywhere you walk, right? Like
exactly.
Just that freaking, like I would love to go to New York City back in the 80s, but I may not survive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if that's what I would pick. Maybe if I had like one of those hazmat like bubble boy suits, but it just starts off so grimy. But then this opening is kind of the perfect encapsulation of why this movie kicks ass. It's because it starts off and there's this lady who looks like Brian Urlacher trying not to like lose her bowels, kind of shuffling through the streets. You're like, what the fuck is happening? And as the camera gets closer, you're like, what's wrong with her? And that, you know, all of a sudden these muggers emerge, right? Give me your shit. And when Stallone unveils the mask after he whoops that guy with the purse, and he's just like, come on, I'm hot for you. I was like, yeah, this movie's an A+. Like, whatever happens after that.
That is simply the start, right? And I find it
within like the first 2 minutes.
I find it ironic too that when Stallone is in this getup, he looks more like Stallone does today with like the exaggerated like features of the face, like
the fucking Botox egg face.
Yes, so like it's basically ironic to me that he's himself later on in the future, but then he reveals that it's the Stallone that we know of the cinema age of the 80s, right?
Oh, it's so well, also, it just struck me immediately. I was like, because it tells you a lot, right? That this grimy city and these guys just like, this is not a glamorous police job, right? A lot of these movies play the duo buddy cops as like, oh, these are saviors of the city. This just feels like guys cosplaying like angry cops, like getting to beat people up. Like, you know, a Clint Eastwood from his porch, no good hoodlums kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what immediately struck me, I was like, you have the king of suave as your partner. Why is Billy D. Williams not the one in the dress?
Right? Well, yeah,
Like, why is he not the one kind of silking along and, drawing all the wop and then, well, whatever dude wop is. And then Stallone's the one coming out of the alley dropping hammer fist, right?
I think that's a style of music, a doo-wop.
That was their buddy cop name, the doo-wop.
Yes, doo-wop.
Yeah. Nighthawks too, doo-wop.
And then you had Billy D. Williams in the back just kind of watching right as this thing goes down, and he just like comes out. And it's just like, what? Why in the fuck? Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't Billy D. Williams be the one in that spot?
I'm just saying that motherfucker would draw, because that's the old, you got to honeypot him in, right? He would draw so many more muggers if I guess that is the goal. But it's just, and then it cuts to this kind of chase, like, I'm hot for you. And there's Stallone just like, come on, tough guy. And he's doing all this, though, while wearing, like, those fucking varicose vein socks and, like, old lady Reeboks. And I was just like, this movie's fucking great. And that is what this movie becomes, is this never-ending series of, this looks like the traditional cop movie of that time, right? Your French Connections and Dirty Harrys, all that kind of stuff. But there's this extra level of insanity to where you're not sitting there having to buy into the dramatic stakes. You're just sitting there like, what the fuck is this movie going to show me next? And it's delightful.
Yeah, it's super dark and gritty. I mean, that is the best way to describe it. There exists a darker and grittier cut of this. Because I think this movie is only like an hour and 48 minutes, but
it's pretty tight.
There is a 2 hour and 30-minute cut somewhere that's never been released, and that would
there's
be
a Snyder
epic.
Cut of this too.
Yeah, there's a Snyder cut. Yeah, it'll be 4 hours long with needless scenes. It's great.
It's just a lot of Stallone shaving his legs and crying.
Yeah, as he's getting ready for the grandma impersonation, he's like, I gotta shave my legs. I gotta get ready for this act.
He's over there, like, sitting in front of the stove and then running to the fridge so he can practice menopause. He's just like, I take this job really serious.
It's like a furnace in here.
Yeah, it's so fucking funny, man. Because I love, because what it is, it's a tale of these two men, right? On this, it's strangers on a train, right? Like, they're going to collide on this force. The funny thing that struck me in this, right? You got Rutger Hauer, who's just like, terrorism, but first I'm going to shoot my shots, right? That's kind of Rutger Hauer's thing. He's like in the crosswalk about to go in and blow this store up, but he's like, oh, let me bump into this lady, see if I can get some. And then the perfume lady, he's like, maybe I'll smell you up, see if you want to go home and save yourself. But it's so nonchalant, right, that it becomes this really weird tale of, I kept thinking this, right, because it's a weird movie for this time of age, right?
Yeah.
Where it's cops that are holding back from violence.
They're
terrorists.
They're the good cops, right? Like, that's what I love most about it, is that, like, Stallone and Billy D. Williams are like the good cops against evil.
Yes.
Right. That whole idea of like, no, there's good cops out there that just want justice. Right. And they're trying to bring that. But then we're going to start really to see, it's like, well, when does that part of that end? And when do you actually have to start taking risks? Right. And that's a definitely big plot point in this movie.
Yeah. Well, it's so strange because I feel like especially its peers of this time, and maybe that's why it kind of slipped through the cracks as much as it did, is all of them then were playing on this fantasy of, I'm just going to run around and shoot hoodlums. Yeah. Right? Like, I am above the law, right? That's what the cop movies were of this time.
I am the law.
Yeah, right? It's funny because Stallone would then go on to be the law.
He's a cop in a lot of movies. Like, I watched Cobra after this, and that is completely different in the way it's presented, right?
Yeah, and then he became like the fat Midwestern cop in Copland. He's in like he's a lot of different cops, right? Like, every cop you know can find in Stallone to represent them.
You can tell he actually spent the time for this one because this was a pretty passionate thing. I mean, he actually stepped in and helped shoot some of the scenes in between the first director that left the project. Yeah. So there was a day or two in London where that director, I guess, left, and there was the spot for Stallone to get involved, and he was kind of a big part of this movie behind the scenes. And this is Rutger Hauer's first film, right? This is his first U.S. film. This is launched his career in Hollywood, right? So there was a lot of animosity, I think, between Stallone making decisions and Rutger Hauer, but it just adds that much more complexity in that relationship on screen. It's great. It really drives that home and that animosity.
That's so fucking funny. I didn't know about this. It does seem like if there were two actors that would absolutely hate each other, it would be Rutger Hauer and Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, like, it happened.
That
it
does
happened
not
the
surprise
first day. The first day of shooting,
Yeah.
they filmed the end scene with Hauer, and they pull him back with a cable. And Stallone was like, "You need to pull that shit back as hard as possible," and it injured his back. And Rutger Hauer was like, "What the fuck?" Right?
Yeah.
And so that basically started the whole animosity, and that was at the first scene. So this entire movie they're arguing, but I guess nowadays they're probably just like they chalk it up to just oh, we were in a movie and directing and egos and whatnot. But yeah. I think it really worked. You really saw that tension on screen.
Oh yeah. Well, also there's this beautiful thing that Hauer does throughout as Wolfgar, right?
Yes.
Where he looks at Stallone's character as a less than. Right, and that really does work. It plays, but see, there's always that great story from the movie Marathon Man. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen that yet.
It's like Nazis and dentists and jogging, right? That's kind of the gist of the movie. It's really good, actually. That kind of takes it down, but yeah, that's kind of what it is. But there was this thing that they would do. I can't remember who the older actor was, right? If it was Laurence Olivier or something, and he'd be on set, right? And Dustin Hoffman would be like running like a crazy man, right? Trying to sweat and get into character, right? Method. And I can't remember if it was Laurence Olivier or whoever the older actor was would just go, "Dustin, my boy, it's called acting," right? And he'd just like have his coffee, like chill out, dude. And I can imagine Stallone as this like meathead, like you gotta go, right? And Rutger Hauer's like, "What the fuck?" Yeah, cinema. And he's like, "What about movie magic?" Now I'm just in traction. No, I think it works though, because you do get the two edges. This is something I want to run by you. The funniest thing of this movie to me is watching these two men kind of build their legends. And then you just have to ask yourself, like, what are these two guys fighting for?
Right.
Because this is the thing about the gritty, shitty New York is like, because this is what struck me. Does Stallone honestly think he's making this city a better place? And Rutger Hauer, does he honestly believe any of this bullshit he's slinging?
Yeah.
And it feels like no. So what is going on with these characters, right? I think that's part of the fun of the movie too.
I think Rutger Hauer does the typical international terrorist, I want this, I want people released, I want, the message spread across the media. But I don't know if it really is his goal other than just to cause chaos and fear, because he's such a very dark person, right? And that's evident when he's having a girlfriend as this whole thing is happening and storing shit in her apartment and faking a relationship with her just because he just wants to get some of the action, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if his message is more important than actually like what his demeanor is all the time, and just that creepy motherfucker that is involved in like terrorist plots and blowing things up, and it's a fun ride. I mean, Rutger Hauer does a great job of it, and Stallone has to relearn and retrain himself as a police officer to be a counterterrorism officer, right? And that means taking more risks. Hey, if you have an opportunity to take this guy out, you got to take him out. Right?
Yeah, but also he's mad that he's just not a decoy anymore.
Right.
I think Billy D. Williams even says it at one point. He's like, we can stop someone who's going to kill hundreds of people per incident, right? Or we can go back to you putting on your varicose socks and do that. But this is the step up, and you can see him fighting. And I think between the two men, I think it's that watching them make each other so much the focal point of all of this misery in their lives. And I don't think they have any kind of greater mission. There's a kind of hopelessness in this movie.
Yeah.
For how funny it is. It's really strange. Because like Wolfgar, he's going over there. And one of the things you're like, wait, what? Terrorists think you're too crazy to be a terrorist? Okay, that's a weird subplot. And when he goes to get the plastic surgery, this is one of my favorite moments. Because I always think Rutger Hauer is one of the best actors that he can do two things at once exceptionally well. And I love the menace when he has the guy who like fish hooks the plastic surgeon. And he's like, I want to be beautiful. And I was like, that's fucking perfect. And in that one moment, you know everything about this character.
There's so much to unpackage there, because the first thing I thought of is I didn't even realize Rutger Hauer was in the first act of this movie, because he looks completely fucking different. And I actually wrote in my notes, like, not Hauer, not Rutger Hauer. Yeah. And then right as we jumped on, I was like, hey, I don't see another billed actor as, Wolfgar. And it's like, no, that's Rutger Hauer. So we have a Die Another Day plot synopsis going on here, right? It's like, oh, I need to change my appearance because I need, the heat's on, right? I gotta change it up.
Yes.
And what's so great about that is that they curb it to Stallone, who apparently is a caricature artist, as he's drawing like facial features of Rutger Hauer, right? And you're thinking, oh, this is just a clever way of transitioning to a scene. And then all of a sudden, they're in a fucking disco, right? So Rutger Hauer's been in London. He's been blowing shit up, and now he's come to the States, right?
Yeah.
So you got a counterterrorism guy coming to Stallone and the police and the New York PD, and he's like, you need to take this guy out. This is how we do this. We have to take by no means necessary, right? Risk the fuck out of everything because this guy is going to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then they go to a disco and they start, trying to find him out. And they find him, and he literally has this drawing with him and like erases facial features. He's like, if I erase this line on his face, does that look like that guy? And that's how we transition to actually like the introduction of these two characters.
What an actual bizarre, man.
Bizarre. And I'm like, this just feels like dated, like for this time frame, because disco at this point is probably dead, right? In the 80s. And I'm like, why the fuck are we at a disco? This is crazy.
Well, yeah, it also shows you the depths of Wolfgar again, right? That he's like, Satanism is fine, but first I must disco duck.
I must point my finger in the air and then do this.
I will important. Destroy America's favorite pastime, John Travolta dancing. And it's fucking craziness, though. But that's what I really like, right? Because they do this motif a lot of the camera kind of pushing in on Stallone's eyes and on a picture of Wolfgar.
Yeah, I explained that scene. This scene is like 10 minutes long. They're going through the entire fucking dance floor with a great song. I think it's Brown. Is it Brown Sugar by Rolling Stones? So it's one of the Rolling Stones songs, but it's such a really cool montage of like searching through people and shit. It's great.
Yeah, Rutger Hauer's just getting worked on, and Stallone I was like, stop getting closer and just staring at him slack-jawed. I was like, the moment you even think it might be the global terrorist, how about a running tackle? Like,
or how about if
drop kick his ass?
If you're gonna be so cautious with your disguises for police work before this, they certainly didn't disguise themselves because they're just like in big like coats and like grandfather sweaters and like you got the sunglasses. If I had aviators, I would have warned them for this. And he just like slowly goes about the crowd. I'm like, you're sticking out like a sore thumb. He's gonna see you, right? And inevitably does see them and then takes the fuck off, right? So it's just kind of like well, what did you expect?
He even does the old man move of, let me put my spectacles on. And it's like, God damn it, Stallone. Yeah, because the first scene, he's all, hot to trot for these criminals. I was like, just run over and fucking mug this guy. And again, this gets back to this weird time shift, right? Decades later, where the thought of a police officer being like, well, he might have killed 400 guys, but I'll take it real slow. I was like, this guy has like Carl Winslow level amounts of restraint. And it's baffling to watch.
I am so happy you mentioned Carl Winslow because I made a mention as we were taking notes and watching the movie. I find so many similarities to Die Hard here from multiple like renditions of the movie, right?
Yeah.
We have a cop versus a terrorist, right? Okay, that's pretty simple. But then we have a cop with a romantic issue, right? Because he's too busy living the cop life and he can't translate that well to his actual relationship life. And then we have a situation where you can't shoot, right? There is a plot point where it's like, he's got to take the shot, right? You got to take the shot. You can't worry about hitting an innocent person, right? And that comes up during this chase scene from the disco because we have an awesome moment where they're jumping from subway car to subway car and he's taking hostages and it's going through and it ends up with a great moment of they're close to him and then Billy D. Williams gets cut in the face like straight up just like sliced like Joker. And it is intense. It is a great scene. It's like a 20-minute chase scene. It's awesome.
Well, that scene's really funny too because that's the moment where Stallone's like, I have been so reserved. You shot a guy in the disco. Hostages are fine, but you have maimed the beauty of Billy
D. Williams. How dare you?
Never. And it's like, now it's war. But yeah, I mean, that the Die Hard thing too is fun because it becomes this high stakes terrorist versus cop game. But really what it is it's almost a comedy in disguise in a way. So a lot of the weird tonal shifts that this movie has play very much like Die Hard to me too. John McClane in a dress would have been way better though.
So good. That would have been so epic. Yeah. Forget the toe scene in the carpet. No, put a dress on him, make him do something different.
I want him to see like, oh, I'm a hostage. Ha ha! Yippee-ki-yay.
Yeah,
Right?
that last
It's
scene, instead of duct tape,
Dude.
a dress would have been so much better, right?
So
that
much
would have
better.
that would have thrown Hans Gruber off the building by itself. He would have been like, I'm jumping out this window.
Yeah.
Don't stop me.
This guy's not John Wayne. He's John Wayne Gacy. This guy's insane. but I think it is fun though, right? Because I like this notion of there is this thing that Stallone does a lot, right? And the disco's a great example. If you were going out to the disco, why not get your fucking Leatherface mask,
right?
Get a dress on, go dance or do something. There is this weird sabotaging of himself that Stallone is doing through this whole movie.
Yeah.
And it's really evident because, like, there's the one where he's dressed like a banker, right? And he's like, do. He's walking in the tunnel. And the other cops come in. And he starts, motherfucking them. And the other cop's like, we don't like you, you glory hounds. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Like, those beat cops, the kind of Keystone cops, chubby old guys, and these, like, super cops that we've been following, they're going after the exact same criminal.
Right.
So Stallone's like, I am a super cop, but I'm essentially busting guys who are going to steal an old lady's purse. There becomes this weird... Why is this character still here? Right? Because we find out later he's this amazing murder machine from Vietnam. So he has all these skills. He's in shape. He's really committed. Why is he the guy on the purse beat? Right? So there becomes this question of, what is Stallone's game here, right? Because they also give Billy D. Williams one. This is one of my favorite moments in the film. Is at the start, they're like walking through back alleys and through roofs. The weirdest way to get to this apartment building that they ever could take.
Everybody uses fire escapes in New York. Doesn't everybody know that?
Yeah, I was like,
apparently that's how you get. Like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Yeah, and people who have tons of drugs in their apartments, they don't need lookouts or anything. Like, we never saw him coming from the stairs directly to our window. But that scene when he busts in and the drug dealer's like, what do you want, pig? How much? And you see the fucking rage in Billy D. Williams' eyes, and he fucking butts him. But when he locks eyes with the little kid who looks like he's no more than like 6 to 10 years old with his hands up, and they are staring at each other, right, in this moment. I thought that was really cool too. What did you make of where these two cops find themselves now?
Well, I think just the relationship between Billy D. Williams and Stallone is really evident on screen. And that, going back to where he got sliced in the face, right? I think the movie got all of its F-bombs out in that one, like, 15 seconds because Stallone's like, fuck you, fuck, 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 fuck.
Yeah.
Just like super, super sad because him and Billy D. Williams' relationship is what's integral to the plot of Stallone, I think, trying to become something that he doesn't want to be at first and then realizes that it's necessary. And that moment in where he's holding the shotgun up to the criminal, right? And he sees that child, Stallone's like, it's not worth it. He's telling him, like, don't go there. Do not do that. And it's interesting because Stallone ends up trying to leave, like, the police force. He was like, I'm not going to do this, right? So Billy D. Williams kind of has to help him say, well, like, hey, you're going to do it anyway. Like, you're going to have to face facts and come back to us where you're going to take out the bad guy. And it's a really cool, like, Billy D. Williams kind of helps guide Stallone back and even just becomes the communication guy in the later scenes where he's just kind of relaying back and forth. So, yeah, I loved it. I love that relationship. I
thought that was cool too because he kind of they're always helping each other, right? Because in that moment he pulls Billy D back, right? And they kind of hint at both of their pasts, like maybe there's stuff going on, like him being in Vietnam,
right,
and coming back to this trashy New York City. Maybe it's he's like, what is the fucking point of all this? And he like that job is what he lost his wife for. It's so baffling. But to see him finally get pulled back in and begin to care about a mission again. And this becomes kind of the lever scene of the film, which is when Billy D. Williams is, all bandaged up. And Stallone's like, you'll be back. You'll be back. It's fine. And he just goes, you should have taken that shot.
Yeah.
And you can see the weight. Because I think Stallone is such a better actor than people give him credit for. He's really is a very talented actor beyond just the action guy. And that moment, watching the weight of that sit upon this man, I thought it was really cool. Granted, I'm not like a huge proponent of, you should just start going guns blazing. I think it's kind of a cop thing that we've accepted in movies, and it's kind of spilled beyond it. It's not as beautiful when you see it in real life. Yeah, but in this movie, they've set Rutger Hauer up to where we're all kind of like, you should have fucking taken that shot.
Yeah, why not? Right? He had one lady, like this, and his face was completely exposed, and yet Stallone's just like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna risk it. Right?
But imagine this though too, because we watch him as, to your point, how many people had a chance to rush Rutger Hauer, Wolfgar, and never raised a hand to help?
Nope, it's bystander syndrome and scared. Like, people are just frightened.
Yes.
And nobody wants to take that risk.
Well, I mean, it's because I remember when all this was going on in our own terrorist moment in life, right? When 9/11 happened, I remember people being like, all they had were box cutters. Like, I would have kicked their ass. I'm like, yeah, you fucking say you would have. But, like, that has to be fucking horrifying to be like, fuck, I'm just, like, air commuting. And now people are getting sliced. So there is this, I imagine Stallone walking through and being like, I can hit this shot. We see him when he's mad after he gets admonished, go hit that target and just blows a massive hole through the head of that target.
I'm like, I think you got it, man. I think you could have taken
so
the shot.
we know he could have taken the shot.
Yeah.
But maybe there's this Vietnam leftover, and then maybe this, why am I fucking fighting?
There's reluctance
when no one else is fighting.
Yeah, there's a reluctance there. And
Yeah.
I think that it's a really awesome moment because it comes to the very end where that is resolved, and finally it's such a cool thing. This movie is an homage of itself because it ends as much as it starts, right? It just ends in the same way, and it's great.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that becomes this important thing is we pull back from, the police who thinks he's going to save the city and the terrorist because Rutger Hauer's speech because that's the other thing, right? So as Stallone, why is he doing this? At the end when Wolfgar, gets in this thing, right? I thought it'd be funny if the first Rutger Hauer we see, like big face, eye lens was Wolfgar, and then he's like, "You killed my brother. I'm Dolfgar," right?
I'm
like,
Dolfgar.
That's what Rutger Hauer comes. I'm Dolfgar. I'm really mad. But when he gets on that air tram, I thought that was such a cool scene too because it's mirroring this Stallone journey where you're not getting out of this. You know for a fucking fact you're not going to get out of this and you're not going to win. Right? So what is the point? Is it just to come eye to eye with this, drag cop and tell him to fuck off? And then they even ratchet it up a notch. One of the absolute coolest scenes in the movie is when he's like, I have an infant on. He wastes this lady.
Yes.
He shoots her.
Oh, just kills her, right? He literally goes in and he's in this tram, which I haven't seen a tram like that since Spider-Man. But
yeah, never ever in my life would I ride one of those.
Right? I was like, not cool. But there's like 25 people or whatever, and he just gets in this tram with his compadre, and literally just takes a hostage and shoots her to make a point. And Stallone is cinematically and I guess over the top, which is not this film, but he's over the top and he's in a helicopter watching this, right? So he's in a helicopter watching this. He's going to try to console or talk to him, right? And he just shoots this lady and throws her off the tram to basically show I am not taking any shit. Like, this is real. I'm gonna kill people. And there's an infant crying on board the tram. So he has Sylvester Stallone come up. It's like this really weird, like, I'm gonna be on a barge and then be lifted up into this tram car.
It's like a Batman grappling hook line,
yeah. And you just see like Stallone just like being like lifted up, right? And apparently this is like one of the most dangerous stunts Stallone did because they didn't test it, and they just basically like if he fell, that's a long fall. You're probably gonna die if you hit the water like that. It's like cement.
Well, that was it. That was Owen Hart, right? They changed the harness and he fell like 60 feet and dead.
Now imagine doing that outside in the elements. So it's
hundreds of feet.
It's an intense scene, but it's a very well done because you feel claustrophobic in the tram. You feel lost outside of it. It adds that element of just intensity. And then obviously Stallone gets the baby and he like lowers himself down.
Now that is what I was going to ask you. Was there any part of your mind that's like, he's going to fucking kill Stallone right now and he's going to kill that baby?
I thought it would have been an interesting spin if like he would have killed Stallone and then Billy D. Williams would have to like
absolutely
come in and save the day.
I thought for sure this was happening, right? Because the tram, while on a narrative level, right, this terrorist plot doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. What is he gaining? What is he gaining from this? Yeah.
But what it becomes is it's this tiny little captive audience, right? Like we had these black box theaters in LA where you'd go watch actors do like one-man shows, and they're like, "I've got you now," and they would go huge, right? They're like, I'm going to show you all my acting.
Yes.
And that's what this scene is, right? Because everything he says in that tram is fucking nonsense.
It is. His demands are insane.
Yeah. But not only that, he's like, I'm a liberator. I speak for those who don't have a voice. It's like, what the fuck are you talking? And then Stallone comes up on the cable, like you said, fully knowing he could die at any second. And he goes, tell these people, right? Just this audience, right? That has no ability to affect what's happening. They don't matter in the grand scheme of this story. Tell them that I brought New York to its knees in fear and that the cops are cowards.
Yeah.
And so you're watching Wolfgar be exposed, right? So this is the real Wolfgar, just this tiny little man who's trying so desperately to be this big giant monster. And he's talking about, how he needs the press. And so you watch this man and you know in your mind that Wolfgar has to know how full of shit he is. And what would get more press than he called the cop up to grab the baby and he fucking cut the cable. And to your point, because they had Billy D. Williams right there, and you start kind of doing the mental math, right? That little bit of meta game against the movie where you're like,
I know where this is going. I know what's going to happen.
But also you're like, there's only like 20 minutes left. Billy D. Williams can get us home.
Right.
Like we could just shoot this motherfucker from afar. And I'm telling you, it's kind of like I read the Star Wars novels a lot, right?
Sure, yeah.
And they're really fun.
Wrath of Thrawn, like the Thrawn trilogy I've read.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was rereading this year. And the Bounty Hunter Wars. Man, I like them, but the problem inherent in Star Wars novels is that Luke Skywalker's not going to get killed.
Right.
Right? And so there is like, oh, this is thrilling. Well, kind of. Like I knew he was going to like X-wing away. Or whatever.
Yeah.
In this moment, this is one of those rare moments for a movie
the
that
safety net is gone.
You absolutely, exactly. I really did not know, and that's pretty rare for me. I feel like I'm pretty good at knowing where the movie's going. I was truly holding my breath, not sure that they weren't going to kill Stallone and a baby, because that's just the kind of movie this is. Let me ask you another thing. When Wolfgar says, "You go to a better life, I envy you."
Oh, so dark.
So perfect, though. But did you ever believe him? Does he believe that when he says it?
No. And I think what's interesting, too, for me is that as you see him do this act of just terrorism, however you want to say it, it really kind of goes back down to what is he really doing? Like, what's his goal? Because he ends up saying, I want political statements made in the papers. I want it on TV. I want political prisoners released. And he just like spouts off a bunch of names. And he's like, and I wanted it by 10 p.m. And you would assume that it's probably midday at that point. So it's like, it's almost like a doomed venture. And he knows that, but it's a weird way of like he's trying to fill the role of the terrorist and Stallone is trying to fill the role of the cop that he needs to be. So it's kind of a really weird juxtaposition of the character arcs. And and it's just a very weird, like, I don't really know what his goal is besides just, this is the last hurrah, right?
Yeah, because it's weird because you would say his main mission in this movie is to get all the pussy he can.
Right. And he's doing that. Yeah.
And it seems like he's pretty good at that. And you're like, but he doesn't use the terrorism. There's that great moment when the lady's like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm an international terrorist and a lady killer. And he's so charming. She's like,
that's so perfect.
Like,
I'm looking
for it. Yeah, like, oh my God. But that's what, so you're like, what is, if his whole thing is just to become greater than thou, right? He creates this mythical character, Wolfgar.
Right.
Is this the best way to do that? And I think what becomes funny is, because at the end, there's all these insane things, like, when Stallone's just for no reason, like, give me a tape recorder with the dead
that was like
voice.
Out of left field, and then all of a sudden you're gonna confuse him on that, like very.
And the lady hears it and is just like, for no reason, just gets mad, and then gets shot, and it like anarchy breaks out, right?
Yeah.
But I think what becomes funny is when him and Stallone finally come face to face, they're just these avatars for the uselessness of the world in general, right?
Yeah.
Like you're fighting to save it, you're fighting to bring it to its knees. And these people still got on the tram in the morning. The world is going to keep going on. Your fucking false missions don't matter. There's a real kind of subtext of, hey, maybe be nice to your wife. Maybe take a second. Be okay with, like, having a kid. Like, the world's going to keep spinning without... Because I think that's one of the fun things this movie does, is with the, we're adding plastic surgery and disco and all these weird things. The movie's inherently telling us that this is not a high-stakes game. Whereas every other cop movie you watch, they are playing it to the bone, right?
Right.
This is life and death. And this movie kind of has the built-in subplot of, everything's life and death.
Yeah. It's like, real, right?
Yeah.
This is something that can happen because a lot of times in these situations, if there is a tram that's taken over as a hostage as a political statement, there really is no end game for them, right? You know what I mean? Like there really is no purpose of that besides just to spread fear.
Yeah.
And, when he is able to transition from the tram by rounding up all of the hostages in a circle around him and his compadre, and all of a sudden, like, the compadre is just shot because of a random occurrence of a recording that Stallone somehow
She
found.
gets so mad for no reason.
And just obviously then Billy D. Williams comes in with a sniper shot and takes her out. And then Rutger Hauer escapes on the bus that is there to pick them up because he wanted Stallone to drive him to the airport, which was never going to happen.
Yeah.
And then we have an amazing bus in the ocean or bus in the Potomac scene where it's just full on, full metal right into the water, and somehow Rutger Hauer escapes. And it's just...
Now, this was brilliant because I thought the movie was over.
I did
too.
I
thought what they were going to do was this like question mark ending where it's like, we can't find Wolfgar, and they're like, he's gone. He's the rivers now. And so we're going to be left as an audience like there will always be a Wolfgar. And we'll always need these cops, right? These good guys. And then the movie just is like, just for fun on the way out, we are going to give you one of the all-time greatest endings in the history of movies.
Do you remember how this movie started?
Yeah.
Well, if you do, here's what we're giving you.
Did you have a screenplay book that talks about book ending? Because this is it.
This is the book ending for sure.
But it's such a baffling... So you have to lay this out. Cause I watched it and I was just like, this is too fucking good. This is all-time stuff. And then like 20 minutes after the movie, you're like, but wait a sec. Hold on. So you're
what just happened?
Yeah, he's down at the river also, right? He's probably got some paperwork from everything that's gone on today. And he's like, no, I've got a hot tail. Because as we find out, I'm starting to see through this son of a bitch's eyes, right? I got to hightail it to my ex-wife's. He's got to swim and get there, so I have a bit of an advantage. So you're like, the time window on, hey, ex-wife, I know we're not that cool. Give me your biggest nightie. Get out of the house. And I'm going to start cooking. And if I'm not mistaken, when he turns around, the gun is in some kind of Ziploc bag.
It's almost like in a casserole or something
so
ridiculous.
He's like stirring casserole with the gun. And it's one of those things you're like, how long was he planning on living like this? Because what if Rutger Hauer gets out and he's like, oh, fuck today, I need a rest.
I will say that
like, how long?
The way that it's filmed is perfect because you really have... I mean, obviously, when it happens, you're like, "Oh yeah, I always knew that was going to happen." But I didn't know at the beginning.
I should have, and I didn't.
I was like, "This movie's that clever." But that's like one of the greatest breaking and entering scenes I've ever seen, where it's like it's so maniacal and like quiet, but he's like busting open a door, right? And he's getting so close to what you think is the ex-wife, and all of a sudden it's surprise, motherfucker! Boom! Like just. And annihilates Howard, and that's when he actually got pulled back, and that was the first scene that they shot. So imagine going from that and then filming the rest of the movie.
Just fucking get smacked into that wrought iron fence.
Incredible. And then the movie just abruptly ends with Stallone thinking on a sidewalk, right?
Yeah, he doesn't even give him like a chill, nothing. Yeah. But there's so much I love about that tag, right? Because it does feel wildly unnecessary. But it's fun, man. And that's what this movie always breaks back to. But I love that because what it does, too, is it shows Wolfgar, if we needed even more reinforcement, this is him. This is the open nerve now, right?
Yeah.
He's just going to kill this guy's ex-wife. This isn't helping any of the people he's fighting for, air quotes, or anything. It's just this absolutely maniacal, crazed eyes killer. And it also, it just is a really good horror movie scene. Yeah. That's your fucking absolute nightmare. What if someone just fucking came in? And, when Stallone turns, it's inadvertently just one of the funniest shots in the movie.
Yeah.
I love Stallone, and he is a bad motherfucker. But there's something about his face when it's not, well, almost even when it's moving or when it's an extreme action, like over the top. He has a very laugh-at-able face. I don't know why. And it's weird because that scene shouldn't work and we should be roasting it for all time. But to me, it elevates it so much.
That's why I'm saying you gotta put in an effort. And Stallone really cared about this role.
Yes.
And that's why it works. There are so many ridiculous, audacious things this movie tries and accomplishes. No problem. Yeah. Stallone in drag twice. He's going to do it. And it's magnificent.
It's beautiful. And I love the POV shot at the end too. Because the movie doesn't do, I don't think, any other POV shots, but one of them is Wolfgar stumbling back through the house. And I love the idea of this terrorist who has these, delusions of grandeur, right? And so his eyes, the close-up on his eyes, right, to match back to when Stallone was looking at the picture, and their eyes are both in close-up. And you see Wolfgar just like, are you fucking kidding me? This is how it goes down for me. And what to see that man who thinks so highly of himself, the POV of him falling backward, and you just see Stallone in that 90 with the wig, not even like put on well, like his
that was his last image of his life. You know,
that's like, this was your grandiose mission. This is how it goes.
This is your political statement.
Yeah, Stallone, it's fucking brilliant. It's just because that's going to be this obituary: police officer and wife's 90 murders pussy terrorist.
So when this ended, I was like, I want more. Right. So I started watching like Cobra, and this, I got to tell you, this is peak Stallone, right? Everything from this point becomes either the Rocky movies where he's got to be ridiculous and fight, the USSR, or it's Cobra where he's doing one-liner, right? This is really peak Stallone for me, where he's got that Rocky for me will be the best. It's an Academy Award winning movie, I believe, for a reason. It is, if you don't like sports, it doesn't matter. That movie works regardless of who you are. This movie for me is like Stallone is going above and beyond, getting involved in the production, getting involved in potentially, decision-making skills with the script, and it works. And then everything from this point, I just feels just like a, Judge Dredd or Cobra. It just seems much more, there's no soul to it. And this one really did have a soul.
Yeah, and I think that's the alternate path, right? Like, what if Stallone hadn't become the 80s action icon, but he was just the guy who was in this?
Yeah.
And all of these kind of weird thrillers of the age, right? And yeah, because I think that Rocky, I think, will always be the best Stallone ever was. Because I feel like when he wrote that, it's the most, he's just writing himself, right?
Yeah,
he wrote this
exactly. You believe
personal,
he is Rocky. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's his journey, his fight to be someone, right? In Hollywood mirrored. It's just this perfect, he couldn't have had a better role for himself. But this one is him going outside of what he normally does a little bit, right? Because I feel like in all his other movies, right? Like, I adore, Over the Top is probably my favorite Stallone movie. It's not probably everyone's popular choice, but it's just so fucking fun, right?
Yeah.
And that one, he's just doing this kind of caricature of that guy, right?
Basically, just pay me $25 million to do one role and I'll do it, right? Like, this is
show
basically
up
what happened.
And be a badass and deliver some snappy, like, I got it figured outs. Right? This one, he's kind of the cop who doesn't believe. Every other one, there's a built-in thing with 80s action movies where it's like they're so buff and they work out so hard that they just always have to somewhat believe they can win.
Right.
This is one of the only movies I've seen with Stallone where he just assumes it doesn't matter if he wins. Right? He feels like he just is running around just hitting people out of like useless rage rather than, on this great hero's quest.
He's a part of the system, but the system has to be questioned, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. What's the fucking point of any of this, right? And I think Stallone is so fucking underrated as an actor. I think he's great. I still think Billy D. Williams should have been in The Dress. That's just
I wanted more Billy D. Williams. He's great in this role, but I wanted more,
Yeah. Well, there's a version where you could have switched it where he was kind of the lead and Stallone's the, rah, we got to stick with it. And actually, if I was casting it, that's how I would have seen it.
Flip-flop.
So it's kind of cool that it became this version. But yeah, I think the other way could have worked too. All right, Blake, if you want to write a final love letter to Nighthawks, right? A final sales pitch, right? Always be closing. Go.
The funny version is if you want to see Stallone in drag twice, watch this movie.
Twice, yeah.
The real one is Oh Nighthawks. God, you are so great. And it's pinnacle. It's a pinnacle 80s movie. It's a timeless movie because it was made in the late 70s and released in the early 80s, but it just feels like it's a somewhat of a capsule of both. So I don't know. If you really like action movies, if you like crime thrillers, it's Rutger Hauer's first US movie, right? Watch this fucking thing. It's amazing. So what was your takeaway?
Yeah, so what I will remember most about Nighthawks is one, I think it's this awesome kind of nihil. I always love the man who realizes his quest is kind of useless, but still fights the fight, right? I like that noble creed. I like the duality of this movie that while it is this kind of serious battle between these two men, it's so fucking strange, right? I love any movie, especially one like this, where you can imagine that everyone's like, this is a serious film. And then they just make these decisions that are so out of nowhere that it becomes insane and memorable. Yeah, the buy one, get one, Stallone and drag is classic. But yeah, I just think it's just great actors just really going for it, like you said. That's how I always remember this movie.
Yeah, it's a great script. Great, even though it shouldn't have worked. the a director leaves, the director comes in, Stallone's really involved in the production. This could have gone so many ways wrong.
Yeah.
It just never does. It just always elevates itself.
And it's really streamlined. It doesn't feel clunky, right? Like it doesn't
great.
feel like it's like two different movies pieced together. It's really fucking good, man. And we barely talked about it, but the music in this is phenomenal. Fucking killer music going on during this movie. I just love some of those, like, duh, duh, like, it's just fucking great, man.
If you, you know what, as soon as this movie ended, I was like, is there a sequel? Which there is none. But Stallone did say last year, May 2020, that there is a TV reboot coming, and it will be on Peacock. So maybe we're going to get some more fucking Nighthawks as a reboot, as a TV show.
That's kind of amazing. I wonder if they can recapture the magic.
I just want Stallone to drag again. Is that too much to ask?
Yes, that's what the Mrs. Doubtfire version.
Yes, Stallone is Mrs. Doubtfire. Yes.
Mrs. Doubt, I always fire. Right? That's
Mrs. Doubt, don't fire. Don't shoot.
I didn't sign up to fire. No. All right, Blake, one more time. Thank you again for joining us. Tell the people where they can find your work.
You can find me on twitch.tv/junkfoodcinema on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central Time. You can also find me on the Replay Review podcast, which is a part of the Junk Food Cinema universe, which is at patreon.com/junkfoodcinema. You can subscribe for as low as $1 an episode. Become part of both great communities at Film Alchemist and Junk Food Cinema. You can never have enough movies, okay? So you got to join both.
Yeah, and Brian was gracious enough to let me come over. You guys have one of the best online communities I've ever been a part of. And I think it starts with you and Brian. You guys are kick-ass. I love you guys very much. Thank you for making the time, and fucking thank you so much for picking Nighthawks.
No problem. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Absolutely. And you will be back. I promise, listeners, we'll have Blake back. And we'll try to wrangle his brother, too.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, guys. Peace.